Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Kataklysm, Goliath, out August 11th on Nuclear Blast. The album has 10 tracks, 41 minutes in length, and this is the band's 15th full-length studio record. They are a Canadian death metal band. The design of this record is a pure representation of the album. When you think about how the album starts, with an opening song that has a built-in intro, and then from that point on is all about aggression, it's all about this pissed off attitude. There's no other interludes, there's no outros, there's no fluff. This is just a straight to the point, heavy record from start to end. And the design enhances that experience. The design really makes you feel like you're listening to a very compact album that gives you that brutality in almost a short burst, but by giving it to you in a short burst allows you to better digest it, and then it also allows you to go back for seconds. So this increases the overall shelf life of the album because it's one of those records that when you reach the end, you don't put it away. You're ready for seconds. You want to go back at it again, almost like one of those fun roller coaster rides. Then as soon as it's finished, you're back in line in order to experience it all over again. This record has that sort of mobility. It has that sort of design. A design, like I said, that matches perfectly the overall essence of the album musically, vocally, and also lyrically. Now, as far as the sound is concerned, this is Kataklysm. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel. They're not trying to create something new, something fresh, something that we haven't heard before. Having said that, I felt like on this album there are some nuances that perhaps haven't been there for the previous records. One of them is simple to see. The mood, the vibe, the lyrical content, that pissed off attitude, that comes across in a very organic way. Not to say that Kataklysm has never released an album where it feels like they're pissed off at the world, because that's kind of their DNA, but this album comes across in a much different way. Maybe they didn't have to dig as deep. Maybe everything was at the surface. And because everything was at the surface, because everything was fresh, because they were feeling those emotions as they were working on these songs, everything feels a lot more natural. It just feels real. The vibe feels real. The sound feels real. The lyrical content feels real. And it's also an album that from a listener's point of view is easy to connect with that message. We've all been through the past couple of years. We all experience these sort of emotions, these sort of feelings. So when you listen to an album that puts to words, that puts to music, everything that we've been going through, it's easy to connect, it's easy to understand, and it's easy to see ourselves reflected in the image that the album puts forward. And because of that, this record may connect a little bit better. It may offer something different that the previous records definitely didn't necessarily have, or didn't go all the way to the point and weren't able to really blossom into full fruition. This album definitely does. Now, as far as how the sound then moves, there are also some nuances within this record. This is a consistently heavy album. That is a fact. From the first song to the last song, you can feel the brutality of this record from a drum standpoint, from a guitar standpoint. But as the record progresses, you also feel like the album starts to become a little bit more groovy, a little bit more melodic. And that is something that happens in a very gradual way. So this way, when you're listening to the album, you never really feel the brutality of the record diminish. Not that it does, but sometimes these kind of elements, groove and melody, they do dilute a little bit of the heaviness that an album could have, and then the listener has more things to focus on. The way they created this album, the way they created the design with a specific sound in mind of having this progression through it, definitely improves the playability, and it definitely allows you to still feel like this is a heavy album through and through, even though there are some nuances that change as the album progresses. I mentioned that the heaviness of this record definitely is connected with the guitars and drums. I would say perhaps even more with the drums than the guitars. The drums on this album are phenomenal. Great sound first and foremost. I love their presence within the mix. I love the production. I love the fact that they don't sound hollow. They have a lot of substance. They have a lot of volume, obviously, but they also have a lot of depth. They really feel alive. They feel like the heartbeat of this record, and that is an important element that stays consistent from first all the way to the last song, also allowing you to feel like that heaviness stays consistent because of the way the drums come across are also consistent. Now, the guitars on this album, they have their heavier side, they have their groovier side, but they also have a melodic side. You see all of them intertwining, but you start to see more of the melodic and groovy, like I said, progression through this album, they start to appear a little bit more, they start to be a little bit more noticeable. Not that they weren't there from the beginning, but they have more of a predominant role down the line than they do at the start. At the start, the guitars pair more up with the drum sound, creating a more thick wall of sound, a thick wall of heaviness that really pushes the listener against the wall, squeezes the listener between two different walls. So it's an interesting element, it's an interesting approach. Once again, nothing completely new to Kataklysm, but the nuances is perhaps what it's new, or at least better defined on this record. I honestly feel like they took everything that they've done over the last couple of albums, but on this album they perfected, they tweaked a few details, allowing those details to have more of a direct impact, more of a role, and therefore creating an album that doesn't break the mold as far as Kataklysm is concerned. This album is the DNA of the band, but it's an album that still sounds fresh at the exact same time. They have this ability. They have the ability to create records that are connected. They have the ability to create records that always sound like Kataklysm, but they never repeat themselves. And changing these nuances definitely allows this album to connect with everything that they've done before, but not repeat itself. An important element anytime you're releasing a new album and you have that sense of consistency as far as your sound is concerned. As far as favorite songs go, I want to start off with Goliath. Such a heavy wall of sound. Talk about a thick wall of sound, but a wall of sound that is not moving towards you at a slow pace. This wall of sound is coming at you with intent. It's pushing you closer and closer to another wall, squeezing you in, and this allows you to feel a lot closer to you that brutality that the track has. It's also a track where the bass is a little bit more noticeable. Some songs, the heaviness of the track is such that the bass gets a little bit lost within it. This one, you're actually really able to see it and see the impact that it has in the overall experience. But the drums and guitar really steal the show. They are the two main focal points of the sound experience, and then the vocals emphasize the overall brutality, the overall aggression, that pissed off mood that each and every single song has. This is a heavy banger. This is a circle pit style track. It's short, just under the 3-minute mark. This is the kind of song that really will get fans going. It's a track that works great as far as the studio process is concerned, but this is a live song, no shadow of a doubt. Next we have Heroes to Villains. The guitars on this song break a little bit away from that wall of heaviness, from that thickness, giving a little bit more of a groove texture at times. This now takes nothing away from how heavy the song is, and it takes nothing away from when the guitars are paired up with that drums in order to create that thick experience. But having this groove infused element as far as the guitar sound is concerned definitely adds texture, and it creates those groove nuances that change the perception of the listener, that allows you to feel like the track is a lot more dynamic and not just a one-size-fits-all heaviness approach from start to end. Vocally, you're really putting words and emotions into what the sound is offering you. The two are so well connected in this song that the vocals feel more like an instrument than anything else. Last but definitely not least, Gravestones and Coffins. This track blends groove, heaviness, and melody. One of those tracks that you can really detect all three elements coming together, all three coming from the guitar side, because the drums stay consistent as they do throughout the entire album. The vocals stay consistent, really matching the energy. But on this track, because of those changes guitar-wise between those three different approaches, making this a very dynamic song musically, the vocals match, not necessarily in terms of the change in tone, the change in delivery, but the emotion that comes with that delivery changes depending on where you are in the track and how the sound behind it is working, the impact that it's having in the overall experience and how you feel towards the track and how you connect with the lyrics. This makes this track on one hand feel like it's going in a lot of different directions, that it has a lot to offer, that it's very dynamic, that it's very fluid, and on the other hand, considering how consistent the drums are and the overall tonality of the vocals, it feels like it's not going anywhere at all. So it has this dynamic, this duality to it that's super interesting for the listener, because it just gives you a different experience depending on what mood you have when you start to sit down and listen to it. It's a song that you can listen to it 10 different times, and I think you're going to have 10 different perspectives on what this track is all about in terms of the emotion that it's going to give you. This is it, Kataklysm, Goliath, out August 11th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.